us. He used cocaine, dealt drugs, and gambled, causing us to live in financial instability. She thankfully saved our lives, moving us from Las Vegas to St. Petersburg, Florida, when I was 3. As a kid, I would hang out with the wrong crowd and began smoking cigarettes at 11 years old. I had no business exposing my body to those toxins that young, but that didn't stop me. Addiction grasped its hold on me before I was old enough to understand it, and was my first taste of being powerless. My grandmother was adamant about taking me to church and ensuring her granddaughters received our communions, as we were raised in the Roman Catholic faith. After my mother's discomfort from having to endure long hours of kneeling and reciting prayers as demanded by her own grandmother, she chose not to impose religion on us. While I was never explicitly instructed about the necessity of religious practice, I always had a belief in God and willingly attended church because I felt His presence. After my grandmother passed away in the hospital the day after my 13th birthday, I found comfort in fervent prayer during those difficult days. However, the loss of my grandmother halted my regular church attendance, and I was seeking validation from the wrong kind of peers. At 15, I began smoking weed and was taking pills my friends handed to me. I went to school high and still maintained great grades, so in my mind, if it wasn't affecting my life negatively, it was okay. My mother convinced my stepfather to take a job in Charlotte, North Carolina, in hopes it would help take me away from the crowd I hung out with and give us a better life. Despite growing up in church and knowing right from wrong, there was a deep-rooted issue I alone could not fix. For a short period of my life, I joined the Army at 17 years old, hoping I would find a sense of belonging and discipline. With my best efforts to stay clean from cannabis, I was discharged with an other than honorable status due to substance abuse issues. This hurt my heart because I lost an immense amount of self-respect and pride. I began leaning on anything that came across my way in my 20s. This included toxic relationships, cocaine, and more pills. At one point, I was calling the man who is Elena's father from a hospital. I had accidentally overdosed, and luckily, by the grace of God, the kind woman we were living with noticed there was something wrong and rushed me to the hospital. I remember the doctors and counselors coming into the room and asking me why I tried to kill myself. I didn't want to die. I was just chasing a high I would never find in substances. A few months later, 20 days before my 21st birthday, I found out I was expecting. And just as this man's mother had warned me, he wasn't in the picture. In 2013, my daddy passed away on Valentine's Day after battling stage 4 lung cancer. Around that time, I crossed paths with Phil, who later became my ex-husband. I sank into a deep emotional slump, feeling like I'd never escape it. Coping with the pain, I turned to alcohol and pills again in search of temporary relief and happiness. Losing the man who stepped up to raise us shattered me, as he was the only one who had never broken my heart. My addiction to drinking began 10 years ago, a year after Phil and I moved here. When Aiden was about 6 months old, I lost my sense of security with the house we had on South Britton Street. I felt unsafe in my home at night and just wanted to sleep. With any bad habit, one was one too many and 1,000 was never enough. This continued for many years, especially after the worst heartbreak of my life, June 25th, 2016, when my 7-week-old daughter, Avery, passed away. I no longer wanted to feel, and selfishly did not care that I had 2 more children to live for. The PTSD was so real. The only time I could smile was if whiskey was burning through me. I found out 6 months later that Amelia was on the way, and you would think that would make it worth changing. Unfortunately, it didn't, and that's when my family stepped in. She was a month old when I walked through these doors, and God showed me a home I needed to be at. I was powerless and full of pride. I knew I had a problem, but the addict in me thought that I had it under control. It took me many years to get some of the principles through my head. I fall short many days with a few of them. After all, this entire process is about progress and not perfection. I didn't become an addict overnight. In these 6.5 years, I have gone through many obstacles, testing my recovery in ways I never thought would happen. I landed in jail, had my kids in foster care, went through a divorce, and thought the worst was behind me. The last few years were up and down. I would get sober and relapse like a revolving door. I was powerless, living through the only ifs. If only I would have stayed in the Army, if only I would have gotten sober to save my marriage, and if only I was strong enough to be a better mom. These thoughts the enemy planted ate me alive day and night. Worry consumed my mind, and I just wanted to escape, especially after losing Harley, my 17-year-old dog, last October. He's been in my life since I was 18 and was a constant who had traveled with me to every place I lived on the East Coast. He was like my first child before I even had Elena. At the end of this month, my 5-year relationship ended abruptly. Heartbroken, I cried for months and was vulnerable to temptation, to say the least. This led to my final straw in December, hearing God's voice louder than ever. I had become a person that I didn't recognize in my mirror, breaking cardinal rules and boundaries I had set for myself in addiction, including driving up the block with my kids in the car under the influence. I got lucky and counted my blessings that Jesus had the wheel. It was the longest 5 minutes of my life, and I cried internally when it resorted to this behavior. I put my DOC before my kids' safety. I was no better than the people I had judged in the past. This action could have cost my kids' lives, my life, and others' lives as well. During this whole month, I was paralyzed by the enslavement I had to alcohol, numbing every feeling my heart felt. I was beyond full of resentment after discovering a betrayal that broke me and my family. I was tired of the loneliness and emptiness that my heart felt. I have been told many times that I needed to exercise forgiveness. But how was I to forgive myself for my addiction once again ruining my life? It caused me to not even know the truth of what I was told I had done, in a stupor that set that betrayal in motion. I acted out of anger and became destructive to myself and others when under the influence. In my selfishness and the whirlwind of my last blacked out weekend, I became isolated and inflicted harm to myself. Drunk me was feeling a separation from God while the enemy feasted on my sorrow and despair. The pounding of my mother's hands on the bathroom door still rings in my ear. As a mom, I can only imagine how terrified she must have been, not knowing what she might have been walking into. This was truly a new rock bottom for me. I was the most powerless I had been since the death of my daughter. In the last 6 months, I had lost 2 dogs, 2 family members, and was heartbroken by the man I was to marry. Officers swarmed my home, and before I knew it, I woke up at Vanderbilt with recollection of Melanie laying on my bedroom floor, comforting me. With a heart of gold, my sister had driven up from Florida, placing me in a facility to get me the medical help I needed. I wasn't just broken, spiritually poor, or trying to escape. I was in my own hell, comfortably sitting amongst my demons, feeding them every ounce of willpower I had left in me. My inner child was screaming at me, asking if this was what we had dreamt up for the life we wanted to live. I was mirroring the generational curses I observed in life, abandoning those I love for a substance that never loved me back. I have learned in these last 43 days an inner peace I didn't know was inside of me. 1 John 4:19-21. We love because he first loved us. Whoever claims to love God, yet hates a brother or sister, is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. And he has given us this command: anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister. This verse jumped out at me when studying the Bible the other day. I have spent too much time of my life feeling anger towards those who have hurt me. We are told to pray for our enemies, and I do not wish to express hypocrisy in my walk with God. Those who have participated in the STEP study may know Step 4's inventory can be tough. For me, it is the hardest step, dealing with the resentment and letting go of the weights that burden my spirit was not my strong suit. I wanted to hold on and return that pain with pettiness. Fortunately, the God we serve enlightens us to know better. We are not meant to walk around adding gasoline to the fires others set. The experiences I have had in my life all seem to collide together, unraveling character defects I didn't know I had. Self-pity, blaming others, dishonesty, negligence, and narcissism, to name a few. I have problems saying that word. Once again, God is there carrying me through yet another storm and has blessed me with the power to endure toxic desires. I am going to sleep talking to him, having vivid dreams of the lessons he is teaching me. I wake up praising him the moment I open my eyes. These behaviors had yet to exist in my 33 years of life. Despite the overwhelming sense of powerlessness that addiction may instill, there is hope. Through our Lord Jesus Christ, recovery is possible. And for me, it began with acknowledging and accepting the reality of my addiction, seeking help, and embracing a journey of healing and transformation. Coming back home, I could not wait to get back to this sanctuary. I yearned for the fellowship of everyone in this room. You all are my people and the support that God has placed in my journey. I was powerless, but the Lord's grace gave me the power to make the changes necessary in my life. I am blessed to be in this room, alive, and saved from the chains so tightly binding me to the cycle of powerlessness. The great news is we do not have to stay in these cycles. Psalm 62:11 says, "The power belongeth unto God." My flesh may have been weakened in many times of hardships, but God's power has always reaffirmed my strength. The battles belong to the Holy Spirit. He has not given up on my soul, knowing I am his child, and continue to lean on him in my darkest times. His love surrounds me, his grace sustains me, and his mercy offers me forgiveness and renewal. I have a gratitude that leaves me in tears of joy daily. I'm reminded of the immense power of faith and redemption. Each step I take towards sobriety is a testament to the unwavering support and guidance that I have received from my higher power, and celebrate recovery. True recovery is not just about abstaining from alcohol, but about reclaiming my life and living it with purpose and meaning through Christ. Thank you for letting me share.